Hello audience. As you can see, I made a new left front side panel, whatever this thing is called, and in this video I'm more or less going to show you how I made this. Now, like I said in a previous video, even though I've got a lot of original sheet metal parts, including one of these, I chose to make every panel on this thing new. Reason being, after figuring out how to make them, it's easier, at least for me, to make them new than to try to save the originals. Anyway, let's get started. Now, here's the original. Now, making this in one piece would have a lot of challenges. First of all, this bead would be hard to make because the roller that I have is not deep enough to go this far. The biggest problem is making the cowl section. Reason being, I can't let this stretch or shrink at all because none of this needs to be disturbed from it. So to make this curve in, I would have to do a lot of shrinking all across right here, which would be a lot of work and it wouldn't come out very good, and probably have to make 3 or 4 of them before I came out with one that I liked. And doing all that while trying to make all these beads and making them come out okay, it would just be a big hassle. So what I'm going to do is pretty much what I did for the other side. I'm going to make it in 3 separate panels: the cowl panel, the door panel, and the side panel. Only instead of finishing the edges here and here and working out a door gap, I'm just going to make them a little too big so they overlap, then attach them all in the frame where they look good and weld them together. So the first thing to do is to pattern this and make the 3 panels, which is pretty much exactly what I did in videos 1 and 2, so I'm not going to get too in detail about that. Now, looking at the original left panel, you can see right at the end of the cowl panel there's this hole for the windshield rod, which uses about a 5/16 bolt. And even though it's kind of shattered here, you can see where the bead is indented to clear the bolt head. Now, this is something I need to do. Now, I ignored this on the right side because I can do it anytime before final assembly, but on the left it's going to be more difficult with the door panel welded to it, so I need to take care of it now. So I made this. This is a piece of steel pipe with a 1-inch inside diameter, and I cut it and filed it so it fits inside the bead of the new panel. And here's the new panel. I clamped this in the vise and then just set the panel on top of it like so and just tapped around it with a hammer, and I got this indentation in it. Yeah, it's a little rough, but it'll be fine once it's finished. And it's pretty much the right size for the bolt. So that was easy enough. Now, you may remember in the first video when I made the cowl panel for the other side, I had to heat shrink all this, but what what I did with this one was I was able to stretch out the bead enough so it didn't get that much distortion down here, and what little it did I was able to hammer it out. So I was able to skip the heat shrinking on this side, do a little neater job. And now I've got it aligned pretty good. I'm getting ready to weld it. Now, where the beads are, I just cut it so they line up flush, and then just weld them together from the outside. I'll make sure they fit really good first. Now the beads, obviously they overlap. On the inside, it's got about an 1/8 inch overlap on each side. And this gap along here, I'll point the welder in this direction and just fill that in with weld, and it should work pretty well. The only thing that concerns me is the cowl panel. As you can see, it's a bit distorted here. There's a bit too much material here, which the same thing happened on the right side, and when I bent the flange over, that fixed it. So you can force it into place, and I think if I do that and then weld it together like that, it'll be fine. So I'll try that. Worst case, I can always heat shrink this. So I'm going to start welding it together little by little. I'll do a little bit of it, then stand back, look at it, make sure it looks good, and then repeat until it's welded together all the way. Okay, got it welded on pretty good. It's holding together. I've been going real slow with this to try to keep it from heat warping. And as you can see, there's not really any warping. Now the cowl panel, as I expected, I clamped it in place while welding it, and it's holding its shape really good now. I may need to heat shrink it a little right here. Maybe not. There's a slight bump there. I'll try to hammer that out. As I said, I'm going really slow to keep the heat down. So it's been an hour now, and yeah, it's cold to the touch, so I'm going to weld it some more. Now, when you're welding something like this together, do not use plastic clamps to hold it together. They will just melt. If you do, keep them away from the surfaces that are going to be hot. Now these corners, I was originally going to weld from the outside and leave it, but I decided to take it off the frame, and I made a little patch panel for each one, and I'm going to weld it to it from the inside, then weld the seam from the outside. This way the weld will come out nicer, it'll be stronger, and less chance of blowing holes through it. Alright, it's finished, for now anyway. Now, I still need to run a grinder over these welds and smooth them out. And when it's time for a proper assembly, I'll probably fill in this seam with lead so it all looks like one piece. Now, I did end up distorting it a little from the heat. Not very much. So, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that, if anything. It's not really all that much. So, anyway, for now, I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm sure many of you must be wondering, since I manufactured all of this, why didn't I just make this a functioning door? I'm surprised I haven't been overwhelmed with comments of people asking that, because last time I put together an original touring car body, practically everyone told me, you need to convert it to 4 doors. Now, as I may have said in a previous video, I'm not sure, but from 1913 through 1925, most of the touring cars built only had 3 doors. They did not have a front driver's side door. It was just blocked off like this, pretty much. Now, a handful of them through the years did have 4 doors. They actually had a functioning driver's door. And I don't know the ruling on them, why they were built or what, but they're pretty rare and they're quite a novelty to own today. And it's not uncommon for people who are restoring these to convert them to 4 doors. It's pretty simple. So why didn't I do that? Well, there are several reasons. Now, first of all, this door is pretty much completely useless. The parking brake is directly behind it, and the steering wheel is back to about here. It's behind the door, so you really can't use it to get in or out of the car. I mean, yes, if you're really skinny and really flexible and really want to prove a point, you probably could, but it's just not practical. The only real advantage you have with the left front door is it's a lot easier to work on the clutch linkage, and if your car has an electric starter, you can get to the starter drive a lot easier, because that is an absolute nightmare trying to work on it while reaching over the body. So it does have somewhat of a purpose. Another reason is since there's one single piece of wood going from the firewall all the way to the backrest, it naturally adds a lot of strength to the body without adding any weight. And this part of the body does take a good amount of stress. For example, if you're stopped uphill, you have a lot of pressure on the brake pedal. Now you need to put a lot of pressure on the clutch pedal to get moving. That puts a lot of pressure on the backrest, and this holds it really stable. Another thing is the cowl section on these. There's not much to them, and with the continuous piece of wood, it holds this side really stable. But when you have a functioning door, usually what happens is over time, these start to fall back. I mean, it's okay when the wood's new, it usually holds pretty good, but once they get old, they can really start to get loose. Now you gotta remember, the windshield is sitting on top of this, and when the top is up, it's forcing this back. And that's what happens over the years, is it just forces this down, and then you can't close the doors. Now, that is a problem with the right side, but I have plans to make a steel brace to compensate for that. But this was a cheap, easy way to make it not a problem on the left side. Another reason is this was a lot easier and faster to make. I was able to make this in just a few days, and it's one door frame I didn't have to make. Now, I ended up having nowhere near as much free time to work on this thing as I thought I would, so it's been taking pretty long to make it, and I really want to get it done. So I'm trying to streamline the process as much as I can without sacrificing quality, and making a door and aligning it, getting it to fit, that is a nightmare. That just takes a long time, and I really wanted to avoid it. especially since I have 3 others I had to do anyway. And the final reason is this is just one of those things that makes it feel like a Model T. Model T has a bunch of strange, weird, quirky stuff about it that leaves you wondering, what were they thinking? And a non-functional driver's side front door is part of it. When you get in, you either need to hop over the body or get in from the right side. And making it feel more like a Model T, that's just something that's important to me. So I chose to make it this way. Well, that's it for this video. Now, while I was doing all that, I also managed to make the right rear door. And I'm currently working on aligning it. Now, I didn't film any of this because I have another one to make. So, the next video is probably going to be about making the left rear door, and also I need to make some of the wood structure for the back of the body. So, anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.